Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. That's a 2005 Chevrolet. It's a Tahoe. Hasn't ran in quite a long time, I guess. Evidently, what had happened is the guy was doing a power steering pump, if I remember correctly. Put a power steering pump on it. After that, he had left the mass airflow unhooked and I think a low coolant sensor or something he was saying, and then the truck wouldn't start. I believe that's the story. And then what he's done since then is a bunch of testing, put like a cam sensor, crank sensor in it, had it running briefly for a minute or two, and then it quit, and then he ended up burning the starter out of it, put a starter in it, and I think it's been a few months and hasn't had it started since. So we're just gonna start from the beginning, see what's going on. It does crank over. The battery is completely dead. I had it on nuclear all day yesterday, got the battery back up, got a maintainer on it now. It does crank over. But we're going to see if we can get some direction, see what we're missing, if it's, you know, fuel pump, or fuel rather, injector pulse, spark. It sounds normal when it cranks, so it doesn't sound like any kind of weird timing issue or anything. So let's see what we find out. So it's got a few wires hanging under the dash. I noticed when it came in, it's missing the column covers. Obviously has a remote start in it. The guy said do not remove it, so we're going to leave that well enough alone. I'm going to get the scan tool fired up here. We're going to see if there is any codes or any direction this will give us, and we'll take it from there. So right now I'm just letting it go through a system scan. Just going to check all the modules. Sometimes you'll get some clues from other modules other than the PCM. Modules will tell on other modules, especially if there's some communication problems. But we got the green light on the PCM, so it looks like there's no codes there. So we'll let this finish up. So there's 5 or 6 codes in it, but all of them were like old history codes in other modules like the radio and the HVAC and ABS. Nothing really too awful important. Just looking through some data here, a couple things. So what will keep a car from starting? Well, if it's in, let's say we got a coolant temp sensor that's, you know, really skewed, which ours is, it's about 70 degrees, and that's about what it is at the shop today. If we have an accelerator pedal position that's stuck all the way, or not accelerator pedal, but let's say it's in clear flood mode. Let's say our throttle position's at 100%, so that's going to shut our injectors off. You know, in this case here, that's not the case. Just kind of want to look to see how things look, see if there's anything, you know, kind of oddball. There's not a lot that'll keep it from starting. Doesn't look like we don't have a theft light on, so that would also prevent it. And to be honest with you, I smell gas a little bit, almost like it has injector pulse perhaps, which is kind of odd. So one thing I do want to check is we want to look to see if we have RPM. Now I can't guarantee that this thing will show RPM during cranking, but that is one thing we're going to look at. So we'll set our scale here a little bit lower. Alright, so we're going to crank it over, see if we have RPM signal, because that'll be a clue for us. Okay, we do. So that's good. You guys can see that we have RPM signal. So now that we've done a couple little preliminary things, don't have a whole lot of direction from here. We do know a couple things, which is good. We know it's not a security issue. We know it's not in clear flood mode. Appears that we have RPM signal, and I am getting a little waft of gas. I have a pretty big nose. Maybe you haven't noticed, but I do. So I can smell that. So I think what we should do now is we should go out under the hood and see what aspect of the suck, squeeze, bang, blow we're missing. I assume we're missing spark, but let's go have a look. So I've got a Noid light plugged in to an injector. I've got a grounded test light, just going to go right off the end of the coil. We'll have Jason crank it over for us. We'll see if we have spark. We'll see if we have injector pulse, at least on this side of the engine. Be able to crank that for me, Jay?
Yeah, tell me when you're ready.
Yep, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I knew my big nose wasn't lying. So we have injector pulse, but we have no spark. So that's kind of weird. So I think next, did you leave the key on or turn it off, Jason? Okay, good. No, you can leave it on. So it's pretty unusual to have injector pulse and no spark, to be honest with you. So I think what we'll do is we will check our power and ground going to our coils. It's probably the pink wire, maybe the red and white wire. Let's just go through here, being that we have our test light. So we have power on the pink wire. I might have to look at a diagram to see who's who here. Okay, so we have power on the pink wire. So we should have a power, ground, and 4 drivers. So that's what it looks like. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got an extra wire. So let's look at a diagram because I'm not familiar enough to know right offhand what's what here. But can you guys see? I don't even know where you are. But you see we have power on the pink. So let's get a diagram, see who's supposed to be who here, who's the ground. Before we do that, let's grab a high-end light here. I imagine the black is probably the ground. Let's just check that real quick. So we'll go black wire, we'll go pink wire. Uh-oh. And we have no light, so if I'm correct, if that black wire is the ground, then we have no ground. So let's just check that. This will be easy peasy. We'll have the thing out of here in no time. So I looked at the diagram and we are correct. Black wire is ground, so I'm going to back probe it here. We're going to plug it back in. It says G102, so that's the left rear of the head. Pretty common bad ground spot on your Chevrolets. I didn't want to guess, but that was my guess. So we're going to hook the ground to that. We'll hook the ground to our test light here. Hopefully it's a good enough ground. You want to crank it again, Jay? Yeah. We'll just see if we have a spark. It may start, but it may be like super flooded too.
Yeah, ready?
Yep. Yep. They're down. They're down.
The runner.
Yeah, just a minute. We got a performer here, folks.
We got a performer.
All right, go ahead and start it now. We'll see if the old Chevrolet runs. This guy's gonna be kind of pissed. He just towed it all the way from Massachusetts. We got a performer. All right, kind of pissed that I pushed it in. All right, you go ahead and shut it off. Just like that. A little smoke. You blew out some blue smoke back there. That's it. We're done, folks. So I checked the ground. So that ground strap, that's just a ground strap. The actual G102, the black wire on the back, was actually good. But what's odd is we don't have a ground on that side. I want to see if we're missing the ground over here also, which I assume so. We'll just double check. So I got a test light hooked to power. And we're missing the ground here, which is odd because they go to 2 separate splices, perhaps where the 2 splice packs splice onto that one. Because like I say, I poked the wire back there, near the eyelet, and it would carry at least 1 amp. I had Jason cranking it and it didn't disappear, so that's interesting. I thought for sure that eyelet back there was going to be bad. So we're missing a ground. Where it hooks to the head appears to be good. And we're missing it on both sides. So we're going to look at a diagram and see where all of these wires all splice onto that, and I assume that's where it's bad, or the wire itself is broken somewhere else. But when I look back there with a light, it's not obvious. And I think before we get too gung-ho here, let's hook the ground back to the alternator. So I'm still back probed in the other side. I just want to see something. That obviously made this side grounded, right? So that can give us a clue as to where it may be broke. So grounding the coil over there grounds this coil over here. So that's a good clue. So now when we look at our splices, we can at least eliminate a big section of the harness. However, sometimes service data isn't real good as to where the splices are, in the harness. Now I gave just kind of a visual inspection on this harness, and I don't see fresh tape, so it doesn't appear that somebody's been in there meddling with things. But let's see if we can't figure this out real quick. So we look on a diagram and we can see, so we know when, let's see, this is the right side, so we jump right here, and this one has ground, and then this one has ground, so it can't be that splice and it can't be that splice, but I would think we're broke somewhere between S104 and the left side of the engine block. So we got to find out where S104 is. It just says in engine harness. Well, that's helpful. No Sherlock. We know where that's at. So hopefully that makes sense. Like if you ground it here, we get connection all the way over here. So we have to be broke between the left side of the head. I got to make sure it says left side of engine block. I may be wrong. We got to double check this. See if we can 100% pinpoint that. You see, I was wrong. So I was looking up, because I thought it said left side of the head. So this explains why when we change the power steering pump it doesn't run, because look, number 4 is G102. That's the power steering pump. I say we go looky right there. Look at what I found. There she is. The old lonely soldier hanging out down here. Oops, sorry for the shakiness, folks. Hanging out down behind the power steering pump. So that's that. That's our little guy. I'm glad I looked and didn't just assume it was the one on the back side of the head. Actually, I did assume that, and I checked it, and it was good, so I assumed that was wrong. So we did some looking. This wire needs to be fixed. So we fixed it the easy way, folks. We could have put it up on the lift. Tore that ground apart down there, but I'll be honest with you, I shined a mirror down there and she's looking a little bit crusty on her bottom side. So I elected, given the overall condition of the vehicle, to just relocate the ground, and that's what we did. Relocated it up here, as you can see where my pointing is. There was one bolt that wasn't broke here, so we mounted it to that bolt, just had to splice onto the wire, solder and heat shrink it, extend it up, ran it back in its factory location, so if somebody's back there looking for it, they'll be like, "What in the thunder?" and then they'll actually be able to see that and follow it up. But in theory, it should run now. Whoa. We'll leave that right alone. Oh gosh, let's see. Chevrolet. Get my feet around the twisted wires here. Let's get the key on. No dash light up. Oh boy. Whew, she smells. It's stinky. Ooh, Chevy Thunder. I better let her warm up. In the words of Kenny Rogers, you need to know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, and when to run. We're gonna run, because this baby's done. And it runs, and that's all he wanted. Kind of sad story driving it, or towing it all the way from Mass, but evidently couldn't find anybody to take a look at it for him or get it fixed. He gave it the old college try. It was super close. The big clue for me on this one is the fact that we have injector pulse. Typically, if you have injector pulse, you have cam, you have crank signal, you had something to start that injection sequence. That's a sometimes but not always case, so that's why we went right for the ignition coils. Obviously, I think at that point we know they're missing either a power feed or a ground. We found it was a ground. Made the wrong assumption, I guess, when I was looking at the diagram. I thought it said left head, which these LS engines and a lot of Chevrolets have problems with the grounds on the back of the heads. So it didn't surprise me, but when we checked it, it was good. Obviously, it's got a broken body ground there. It could probably cause problems in the future of something else. And then when we looked at data and seen it was on the left side of the block, so that's why you kind of have to look and see what you see, and then double check your data, especially if you assume things and don't read things like I often do. So that's that. Why don't you go down in that comment box, leave a question, comment, criticism, concern while you're down there, subscribe, ring the bell, find us on our socials, Facebook, the Insta. It's the only two places we're at besides here and physically here. But just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.